All right, this is Unit 3, Day 1. Talking about sequences and series. Remember, that's when we had arithmetic versus geometric. Remember, arithmetic's when something is adding by the same number every time, versus geometric is when you're multiplying by a certain number every time. And so there was two different types of equations. There's recursive equations and explicit equations. So with arithmetic, because we're adding the same number every time, our recursive means that we write a sub 1 equals blank, and that's whatever our first number is. And then a sub n is equal to a sub n minus 1 plus d. And d is that common number that we're adding or subtracting. So this part of the equation, you do not write anything in. The only thing you write there is the d part. Okay? And then your explicit equation is basically saying a sub n minus 1 equals a sub 1 plus d times n minus 1. And that is when you're trying to figure out any term. So if I want to say find the 100th term, as long as I have that first number and my common difference, I can plug in the 100th term there and it'll give me whatever that one's going to be. Okay? And so to find with geometric, that's when you have you're multiplying by the same number every single time. So a sub 1 is equal to blank. And so a sub n is equal to a sub n minus 1 times r. And remember, r is that value that we're multiplying by every time. Okay? So then for our explicit equation, that's a sub n is equal to my first term, a sub 1, times r to the n minus 1 power. Okay? And so I'm going to just leave these two columns. I'm going to come back on day 2 and fill out the bottom 2 rows. And and then on the next page, we'll continue to keep filling out part of the tables as well. All right. So then on the next page, I give you some sequences. We did this similar on our study guide. And we're going to do the first 3 columns. Yeah, these first 3 columns for day 1. And we'll do the next 3 for day 2. Okay, so for day 1, we're just determining, is it geometric or arithmetic? What's the recursive equation, the explicit, and what is the 10th term there? So first thing we want to do is find out, is it arithmetic or geometric? So remember, arithmetic is when you're adding by the same number every single time. And the way we did that is you take your second number, 11, and subtract your first number. And then same thing, 16 minus the previous number, which is 11. So notice I'm constantly adding 5 every time. If I do 6 plus 5 again, that's going to give me those numbers. And plus 5 again is going to give me 21. Plus 5 again is going to give me 26, and so on. So that means my common difference is 5 because I'm adding 5 every time. So that makes it an arithmetic equation because it's adding that same number every time. Okay? So then we'll go to the next one. And we're just going to keep going down the rows. So we have 93 minus 101, and then 85 minus 93. And so that means that I'm constantly subtracting 8 every time. So this is, again, arithmetic because my common difference is negative 8. Okay, so then let's check number 3. We'll do 65 minus 29, and then 101 minus 65, and then 137 minus 101. So we're constantly adding by 36 every time. So that, again, is arithmetic. Okay, so then let's look at number 4. If I do 12 minus 4, and then 36 minus 12, notice those are 2 different numbers. So it's not arithmetic, which means it has to be geometric. And so then to find out what our common ratio is for geometric, we divide. So we do 12 divided by 4 and 36 divided by 12, which means that we're multiplying by 3 every time. So this is geometric because my ratio is 3, because 4 times 3 is 12. 12 times 3 is 36. Times 3 is 108, and so on. So it's geometric because we're multiplying by 3. And that's why I did divided, because that tells me what that ratio is between those 2 numbers. Okay, so then let's look at number 5. We do 500 minus 100. I always check for arithmetic first. And then 20 minus 100. And so that is not going to be it. Okay, or 100 minus 500 will give me negative 400. So it's still not going to be right. So then we check geometric. So we do 100 divided by 500. And 20 divided by 100. and then 4 divided by 20, and notice it's all 0.2, so it's again geometric, and my ratio is either 0.2, or you can also say 1/5. That's the same thing. Okay? And I'm just going to go to the next page because I have a couple more on that page to do. So number 6, we do 1/2 minus 1/4, and 1 minus 1/2, which is now going to give me the same number. So that means it's going to be geometric. And to find out our ratio, we do 1 divided by 1/2, and 1/2 divided by 1/4, and that gives me 2. And if I did 4 divided by 2, that's still going to give me 2. So my ratio is 2 because we're multiplying by 2 every time. All right, and then our last one, we do 18 minus 30, and 10.8 minus 18, which is not the same number, so that means it's geometric. And we do 18 divided by 30, and then 10.8 divided by 18, which constantly gives me 0.6. So my ratio is 0.6 or 3/5. Either one is the same thing. You can use the fraction or you can use the decimal. Okay, I'm going to come back and start filling out the second column. Okay, so recursive. Remember, recursive is when you list your first term and then what's happening every time after that. So we always start with a sub 1, and we list our first number in the sequence. So that's 6. And then you have, because there's 2 parts to the recursive. A lot of y'all would only list the second part, but you always have to list the first part. And then my second part is my first term, or a sub n minus 1, plus my common difference, which is 5. Okay, so like for example, number 2, a sub 1 would be 101, and then a sub n would be a sub n minus 1 minus 8, because my common difference is negative 8. Okay, and then for the next example, again, it's arithmetic, so it'd be a sub 1 equals 29, because that's my first term right there. And then you would do a sub n is equal to a sub n minus 1 plus 36. Okay, so that's all of our arithmetic functions. The geometric is similar, but since we're multiplying this time, these are going to be times. So it's a sub 1 is equal to 4, because that's my first term. And then a sub n is equal to a sub n minus 1 times my ratio, which is 30. So the same thing for the next one. A sub 1 is equal to 500. And then a sub n is equal to a sub n minus 1 times, and you can either put 0.2 or 1/5. I'm going to put 0.2 here. Okay. And then flipping back over to the next page, again for our recursive, a sub 1 is equal to 1/4, because again that's my first term. And then a sub n minus 1 is, or a sub n is equal to a sub n minus 1 times 2, because that's my ratio. And then my last one, a sub 1 is equal to 30, and then a sub n is equal to a sub n minus 1 times 0.6 or 3/5. And I'm going to write the fraction in this problem. Okay. So that's the second column filled out. So we're almost done. We got the last column to fill out. And we're going to write our explicit equation. So the explicit equation for arithmetic is a sub n is equal to a sub 1, which is 6. 6 plus my common difference, which is 5, times n minus 1. Now, depending on the work you're doing, sometimes they'll be glad with just leaving it like that. I always want you to continue to simplify. So we distribute our 5, so that becomes a sub n is equal to 6 plus 5n minus 5, and then combine like terms. So a sub n is equal to 5n plus 1. And so notice it tells you to find the explicit equation and the 10th term. So the 10th term is just plugging in 10 into that equation. 5 times 10 plus 1 gives me 51. So a sub 10 is equal to 51. So both of these are my final answer there. Okay. So then let's look at the next example. Again, it's arithmetic. So we start with a sub n is equal to our first term, 101. And then our common difference is negative 8. So I'm going to put minus 8 times n minus 1. Okay. And then we simplify, so we distribute. So that becomes a sub n is equal to 101 minus 8n plus 8. Combine like terms, so that'll give me a sub n is equal to negative 8n plus 109. And again, so that's my explicit equation there. So then to find my 10th term, you would do negative 8 times 10 plus 109 to give me 29. So that is the 10th term there. Okay, so there's two different parts to this problem. And I just gave you the 10th term on every one, but it could a problem could easily ask you for what is the 100th term. Okay, and that is, you would just plug in 100, or you could be asked for the 52nd term. You're just going to plug in 52 into the n value. Okay, so then my last arithmetic one, we start with a sub n is equal to my first term, 29, plus my common difference, 36, times n minus 1. And so we distribute, so a sub n is equal to 29 plus 36n minus 36. And so then that becomes a sub n is equal to 36n minus 7, because 29 minus 36 is negative 7. Okay. And then our a sub 10, we just plug in 36 times 10 minus 7 to give me 353. Also, on this one, this is a typo. That's supposed to be 353 as well on number 3. Okay. So that's number 3. And then number 4 is geometric. So this one's different. With geometric, our explicit equation is a sub n equals our first term, so 4, times our ratio, which is 3 to the n minus 1 power. So to get our 10th term, we would do 4 times 3 to the 10 minus 1 power, which gives me 78,732. So a sub 10 is equal to 78,732. And notice with geometric, I didn't do anything with it once I'm done. You can't simplify this. This is done. You cannot combine the 4 and the 3 because 3 is being raised to a power. The 4 is not. Okay? So that is number 4. And then number 5, so a sub n is equal to our first term, which is 500, times our ratio, which is 0.2, to the n minus 1. So to find my 10th term, a sub 10, we plug it into our calculator. 500 times 0.2 to the 10 minus 1 power, which gives me 2.56 e to the negative 4. And remember, I told you that this negative 4 means to move your decimal to the front 4 times. So it's going to be 0.000256. Because if I move decimal, that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so that's my final answer there. All right, and then back on the last one. Again, it's our explicit. So that's a sub n is equal to our first term, 1/4, times our ratio, which is 2 to the n minus 1 power. So to get our 10th term, that's 1/4 times 2 to the 10 minus 1 power, which gives me 128. And then our last one, our explicit would be a sub n equals our first term, 30, times 0.6, or 3/5, I'm going to go with 3/5, to the n minus 1 power. Notice every time I've got a fraction, I'm putting in parentheses, because that means that I'm going to put in parentheses in my calculator. Okay, so 30 times 3/5 to the 10 minus 1 power, which gives me a sub 10 is equal to 0.302 is what I'm going to leave it at. All right. And so the rest of the columns plus 8 through 10, I'm going to fill out for the day 2 video. If you have questions or comments or concerns, feel free to let me know and I will answer them as soon as I can. All right. Bye.